Alright guys, so I am going to be going over the skeletal system using Doodle notes. If you were in my class before the COVID-19, this is something that we use to help kind of go over things. So I wanted to stick to that and maybe give you guys something that you could do at home. If you have access to a printer and you're doing the digital learning, you can feel free to print that slide and do it paper and pencil style if you are more comfortable that way, and it will give you something to color that has to do with your schoolwork. So we're going to be talking about the skeletal system, which has to do with all of the bones in the body. So at the top of the page, I'm just going to add in that these are the bones in the body. And I'm going to kind of outline a couple of main points for you. The skeletal system has more than one job. Its only job is not just to give you shape and support. This is the one that you guys are usually most familiar with because we all know that the bones hold the structures for the rest of the body. But the bones are also important for lots of other jobs. There are actually 5 main jobs that the skeletal system provides for the human body. So we're going to go over those today. So I'm going to start over here with shape and support because that is the one that you guys are probably the most familiar with. And I want you guys to know that the skeletal system provides a framework. It provides a framework and attachment points for things like muscles, tendons, ligaments, skin, and organs. Now, tendons and ligaments help attach either muscle to bone or bone to bone or muscle to muscle. So those things are important when we're talking about the skeletal system because they're what allows the skeletal system to move, right? Muscles move the bones, which move our arms, right? Bones such as the femur. Does anybody know where the femur is? The femur is way down here. Our femur, let's slide this up for you, is this large leg bone. The femur in the legs bears the weight of the upper body. The spinal column, we know what that is, right? Oops. Right, our spinal column here makes the body straight and supports the head. Okay, so our spinal column is important not just because it supports the head, but because it's kind of shaped like a disc with a hole in the middle, kind of like a donut. And through the middle of that donut are where your spinal cord is. And that spinal cord is protected by that ring of bone, okay? So that's very important. This is a very important part of our skeletal system, okay? All right, so our spinal cord supports our head. Our head, what is our head going to do? So let's talk about what our skull does. This is the large bone that we know as the skull or the cranium. Okay, and the skeletal system provides lots of protection for soft internal organs. Like, what's soft and inside our skull? The brain, right? Your thorax, which has to do with your ribs here. Your spine runs along the back of your thorax. And in an actual skeleton, there's a plate here called your sternum. And those protect our heart and our lungs, other soft organs that are inside that midsection of your body, right? A lot of the stuff that allows us to go through normal processes, okay? So let's scoot down and let's talk a little bit about storage. Now, in the body, we don't think of bones as storing things, but they actually do store a couple of pretty important things. Firstly, they can store fat. If you've ever had your mom or seen at the grocery store bone broth, that's taken by boiling bones for an extended period of time so that the fat comes out of the interior of the bone. And so that fat makes very rich stews and broths. Well, just like that for animals, humans also have that same characteristic. Fat gets stored inside your bones. The other thing that you guys might already know that gets stored in bones is calcium. And calcium is what makes our bones hard, right? We need calcium to help make sure that our bones are strong enough to support the movement of our muscles, right? So large bones like the femur, and this is our hip, store fat and calcium for our bodies to use. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that stuff that's inside. These large bones, they store bone marrow. And bone marrow is super important because it is responsible for producing blood cells. Red blood cells carry what to our body's tissues? We know that they carry oxygen. Okay? And white blood cells are also produced so that our body can be immune, right? That you can have protection from disease. So white blood cells are produced that are important for the body's immune system. Okay? And so when we have this marrow, it's very important for our immune system because that's what protects us from getting sick. So if you know someone who has maybe had leukemia, these leukocytes produced in our bones are responsible for protecting us from illnesses. And so when they have a bone marrow transplant, it gives them healthy marrow that can produce healthy blood cells so their bodies can stay healthy, which is often a treatment for certain types of leukemia. All right, let's look at our last section, movement. Okay, and so movement, a lot of my athletes, this is very important to you, right? The skeletal system gives a framework for muscles. When they contract or get smaller, they pull on the bones of the skeleton, which acts like a lever. A lever like a seesaw, right? Leg bones come together at the knees to form a hinge joint. A hinge joint is a joint that only moves in one direction. It hinges, right? It moves back and forth like a door. So I'm going to add that. It just moves open and closed, right? Just like your knee. Your knee can move back and forth because it has a hinge joint. Your hip has what we call a ball and socket joint. And this allows for movement in multiple directions. So if you're thinking, no, Miss Young, I can move my knee other directions. You can't move your knee other directions without moving your hip. Your hip is what gives that flexibility, right? So hips have this ball that goes inside this socket, right? And so that socket holds it. Our shoulders also have ball and socket joints. And our elbows are a type of hinge joint. Okay, so our knees and elbows are hinge joints. Ball and socket joints are our hips and shoulders. So that's just kind of a brief synopsis of some of the main jobs of the skeletal system. So I hope that helps you guys get a better understanding. Remember, if you're at home, you can feel free to print this out. so that you can color code and decorate it to make it a little more interactive. If you don't, that's fine too. I hope this helped you understand the skeletal system a little bit better.